Aristotle. Socrates. Onassis, named after two Greek philosophers, went from being totally broke at age 21 to being a millionaire at age 23. His father's first name was Socrates. Aristotle was an Illuminati king, a shipping tycoon, an intelligent, ruthless, hard-driving man, a man of the world who spoke a number of languages such as French, Spanish, English, Italian, and Turkish. He married JFK's widow. His ever-present sunglasses made him look like Al Capone to a number of people. Jackie Bouvier Kennedy Onassis, her father was a member of the Society of the Cincinnati, the American equivalent to the Order of the Garter. Her father, Black Jack, was corrupt, what is known as a womanizer. He worked at making a living from the stock market. Jackie's stepfather was the Auchincloss family, an elite family. Her stepfather's second wife before Jackie's mother was Senator Thomas Gore's daughter. Her stepfather was in naval intelligence. Jackie went to the schools that the children of the elite go to. On the anniversary of JFK's assassination, Orville and Jane Freeman were the only ones to remember the date to say or do something about it. The schools that the Jackie went that day to Central Park and had a good cry. Stavros Niarchos, Aristotle's brother-in-law and Ari's business competition. Stavros' parents came from Sparta, Greece. His relatives were rich. Stavros went into shipping and after World War II broke out, left Greece to avoid having to fight for Greece. He was a close friend of Colgate, Roosevelt and Bernard Baruch, who he would invite to his house on Long Island. He rented his Long Island house from Harry Hopkins, who was the man who told Pray F. D. Roosevelt what to do. Even though he was a millionaire, he had a difficult time avoiding having to serve. Eventually, he managed to get himself situated as a naval officer in intelligence for Greece in Alexandria, Egypt. Information sent into the 69 to 70 Who's Who reference book about his wartime exploits are fictitious. Niarchos and Aristotle were friends from 1934 onward, but also at times enemies trying to outdo each other. Both frequently went to St. Moritz, Swit, a ski resort. Stavros also frequents an old Medici family palace, or estate near Turin, where the Duke of Edinburgh and Baron Ely de Rothschild like to go and shoot birds. The estate has many and it isn't unusual for them to kill 1,000 a day. Stavros is an important leader of the Bilderbergers and a billionaire. He married Henry Ford II's daughter, who was 38 years younger than he was, and divorced her shortly afterwards. He worked closely with David Rockefeller. Is the Onassis bloodline still powerful? Aristotle Onassis died in 1975. His son and heir to his throne died in 1973. My inside information about the Onassis family being one of the top 13 goes back to the 1960s and 70s. Is the family still powerful? One big clue that they still wield power within the Illuminati is that Stavros Niarchos, Aristotle's brother-in-law, is a powerful Bilderberger. The executive committee of the Bilderbergers are the equivalent to 9 degrees of the branch Illuminati. Is the Onassis family still one of the top 13 satanic bloodlines? I do not know. The answer lies in doing genealogical work to find out what the core satanic bloodline is that curses through the Onassis family. One whistleblower on the Illuminati was Dennis Brunel, a Grand Master of an OTO lodge, who became disillusioned with the OTO's Illuminati program. Some of his information touches on the Onassis family. My understanding of the Onassis family is limited in terms of their satanic activities with the Illuminati, but I will attempt to give my readers a better understanding. My inside knowledge of the occult side, that is the secret satanic ritual activities of the family, is sparse, because my informants have very limited knowledge of the Onassis participation. However, there are certainly plenty of tracks in the sand which indicate who the business friends of this family have been, and they have been very clearly those within the Illuminati or with connections to it. Turkey, the area that is now known as Turkey, played a major role in the mystery religions. The use of drugs to create religious experiences was developed to a fine art by various occult fraternal mystery religion groups in the Turkey area. The assassins, from where we get the word hashish, controlled parts of Turkey and Lebanon in medieval times. They used drugs to gain the allegiance of their recruits. Some of the most powerful figures for the Illuminati have been Turks. The Grand Orient has had some powerful figures in Turkey. For instance, at the Masonic Congress of all the Grand Orients, that's European Freemasonry, although several American presidents have been members of European Freemasonry Grand Lodges. Bo Ahmed came from Turkey. The Grand Lodge of Asia was represented by Sebite Kadir from Asia. Bo Ahmed took a big role in the Grand Orient's decisions. As a aside, let me explain one example of the power of the Grand Orient in America. The Grand Orient was originally strong in Louisiana but spread itself to many other U.S. locations. Garfield, a very powerful man in the Grand Orient, managed to become U.S. president because the political process got deadlocked at the convention and the Masons suggested him as a compromise candidate. Although Garfield was an extremely powerful Mason, had been perhaps the youngest general in the U.S. Army during the Civil War, the Illuminati ordered him shot after he had served about a year in office as president. Garfield was reported by an eyewitness to satanic rituals to have participated in the cannibalistic rites of Satanism done to gain the spiritual power of the eaten person. The Grand Orient Freemasonry has been linked to other orders of Freemasonry that are also called Rosicrucians. Pope John XXIII joined a Rosicrucian group that had links to European Freemasonry when he was in Turkey. While the secret Grand Orient Freemasonry was very strong in Turkey in spite of its small numbers, the regular American Freemasonry granted a dispensation for a Masonic lodge to operate in Smyrna, Turkey in May 1863, but the charters were withdrawn on August 27, 1880. However, it is interesting that of all the Turkish cities, Smyrna was definitely the best place for Freemasonry to gain recruits. Men like Ahmed Pasha and many of the other Pasha family have been leaders within Freemasonry and the Illuminati. Ahmed Pasha was a Satanist and had a large harem. Mehmet Talat Pasha (1872–1921) was a Freemason and part of the Turkish Revolution of 1908. He was the leader of the Young Turks, which was a joint project of the Sufis and the Frankist Satanists. The type of Satanism led by the Frank family has had connections to Turkey for hundreds of years. Mehmet Talat Pasha was the Grand Master of the Grand Orient of Turkey. He was held the political position in Turkey of Grand Vizier of Turkey, 1917–18. Another Turkish Pasha was part of the Turkish royalty running Egypt when Egypt was part of the Ottoman Empire. His name was Khedive Ismail Pasha and he was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Egypt. It was this Turk, Khedive Ismail Pasha, who gave the famous obelisk to the United States. This obelisk was called Cleopatra's Needle and was originally erected in the City of the Sun, Heliopolis, about 1500 B.C. The obelisk is a representation of a human penis, because sun worship, worship of regeneration, sex, and worship of the sun god Satan were all tied together. Masons helped with the moving of the obelisk, and its dedication when it arrived in New York City. Large obelisks have been erected by Masons in New York, Washington, D.C., Paris, the Vatican, and London. If my memory serves me correct, Berlin received one too at one time. Every morning when the United States President wakes up, he can look out the window and see the Masonic obelisk and be reminded of who controls America. 11. The President has any training in the mystery religion of ancient Egypt, he will also know what body part is symbolically erected in the Washington Memorial. If the United States were ever to return to serving God, that monument would be a good one to destroy. God asked the Israelites not just simply to avoid worshipping such abominations, he asked his people to destroy them, for their very creation was abomination. This touches on the issues raised in another article in this newsletter. The Illuminati of Europe via the BR. East India Co. wrested control from the great moguls of the opium trade during the 18th and 19th century. People connected the BR. East India Co. were responsible for the creation of the Fabian Society. The Illuminati, already headquartered in London in the 19th century, allowed John Jacob Astor, c. Jan. 193 newsletter about the Astor family, beginning around 1815 to operate an opium smuggling operation. Besides Astor's ships picking up quicksilver and lead at Gibraltar and iron, steel from northern Europe, his ships picked up opium at Smyrna, Turkey. The opium was then sold in China. The Onassis family was one of the top 3 merchant families in Smyrna. And Socrates Onassis until 1922 quietly ran a banking operation, or money laundering, from their home which had a large amount of money left by powerful Turks. Could Socrates' father been part of a secret Illuminati opium connection, which had begun back about 1815 with the Astor family in Smyrna, Turkey? We know for certain that he had powerful British, Italian, and Turkish friends before he was arrested in 1922, and that these friends saved his life from a death sentence. About 1925-26, his son Aristotle Onassis, who was from Smyrna, Turkey, began secretly importing opium into Argentina from Turkey, under the cover and disguise of importing tobacco. The Grand Orient of Italy by the Jewish Freemason Emanuele Caris established 2 secret lodges at Salonika, Turkey around the early 20th century. The dialect of the Jews in that area is often mistakenly called crude Spanish. Actually, the language is Latino, a Judeo-Spanish dialect spoken in Constantinople and Smyrna. A Western Ladino is spoken in Salonika *, Bosnia, and Serbia. Masonic Jews speaking this Latino language were part of the Masonic plot that started World War I. Numerous high-level Masons were informed of the coming assassination of the Archduke, which a thinking person could realize what in contradiction. Actually, I would state it slightly different. His life is shrouded in smokescreens. However, there are records, documents, witnesses, etc. And it is possible to reconstruct many details about his life. I will attempt to reconstruct some of the details of that life as they pertain to his secret life as an Illuminati leader. The Illuminati is divided into the drug, porn section, the political, business management section, and the cult ritual section, global communications section, and mind control section. The leadership within the various areas overlap. The drug, porn, political areas work together as a unit. The mind control area seems to be somewhat technical and somewhat separate. Further, several groups have been identified as assigned the job of keeping the long-range plans. The 3 groups that have been entrusted with long-range plans are the Order of the Garter, Order of the Quest, and Keepers of the Dawn. The plans to bring in the New World Order are very detailed, and their management and safekeeping have not been haphazard. Aristotle worked within the drug, porn, political, business management area. Aristotle's power was so pervasive that some researchers of his activities concluded that he was absolutely the most powerful man on earth. This is because they were not aware of the shared power of the Illuminati kings. Aristotle did have worldwide power, but that appearance of power was there because he was part of Maria, the satanic hierarchy which controls the world. Aristotle Onassis family has bared their misfortunes too. All of the top families are in competition, and although they work together they also fight together. Even within Aristotle's own family, a stiff long-time rivalry with his brother-in-law made life difficult for everyone associated with Aristotle. And yet, for all their competition, Aristotle invited Stavros Niarchos to spend time on his yacht, which Jacqueline his wife detested immensely. Correction. Greek is spoken in Salonika, not Ladino. Salonika is a Greek city. Editor's note: Aristotle leaves Greece and goes to Argentina. Aristotle's father had planned to send him to Oxford, but the Turkish genocide of the Greek Turks changed his plans. Aristotle instead set out from Greece to Argentina. Supposedly, Aristotle landed in Argentina stateless and broke. From what I can make out, it appears to be true, although it is possible he had some contacts to help the move to a foreign country. It is said that he finally found a job as a dishwasher in a bar on the corner of Corrientes and Talcahuano in Buenos Aires. Near the end of 1924, he was able to obtain a job IATER on with the British United River Plate Telephone Co. Argentina was at times called the Fifth British Dominion because the British Rothschilds and other British investors owned so much of Argentina. In the next few years, Aristotle proved himself a very capable manager and with great potential as an underworld leader. Juan Guana, the boss of the leading Argentine cigarette manufacturing company, was the first to put in an order through Aristotle to get tobacco from Turkey via Ari's father in Greece. This tobacco importing was the cover for Ardi's opium running. After 2 years, Onassis went into manufacturing cigarettes. Again, this was a cover, but Onassis was out to prove himself in any way he could, so he illegally borrowed the name of a famous Argentine brand of cigarettes called Bis, and labeled his cigarettes the same thing. The owner of Bis sued Onassis for using his company's name and won in court. The cigarette manufacturing was clearly a losing deal, and Onassis got out of it. However, the biographies credit his cigarette manufacturing as bringing in his wealth, while at the same time acknowledging that he was losing money from them and had to dump them because they were unprofitable. Which is it? As I stated, Aristotle was running drugs into Argentina. Aristotle states that he was penniless when he arrived in Argentina at age 21, and that he had made his first $1 million by age 23. Long story short, the facts as to where he lived, what witnesses say, etc., appear to collaborate that he went from having nothing to being wealthy within those 2 years. His lifestyle changed dramatically. People blame his riches on the fact that he worked long hours. I know many people who work long hours and are creative, and people just don't move up the ladder that fast by working for a phone company and selling tobacco. Aristotle's friends Aristotle Onassis associated with many powerful people. The fact that he rubbed shoulders with establishment figures that tie back to the elite is nothing surprising of a person his wealth. However, it is the nature of his involvement with other Illuminati figures that reveals his position within Maria. Before going into his Illuminati business ventures, let's just discuss some of his friendships. An example of his visits to friends is this quote from the book Onassis. The Christina's cruises always produce items which no alert gossip columnist could miss. Onassis dropping in on Prince Alfonso Ohio's Marbella Club in southern Spain and lunching with Baron and Baroness Guy de Rothschild, amidst rumors that it was Rothschild money that had supplanted his own in Monte Carlo, was obviously a noteworthy social incident. Onassis, p. 255 during W. 2. Onassis was a regular guest of the movie mogul Spiros Skouras at Mamaroneck on Long Island. Other close friends of Onassis were the Perons of Argentina. The Perons set up a dictatorship in Argentina. The Perons have a great number of Nazi and satanic connections, activities. If you get into studying about the Perons, you will come up with names such as Joseph Mengele, a satanic Nazi doctor, Dr. Fritz Thyssen, and Otto Skorzeny. Onassis had sexual liaisons with Evita Peron, who was a platinum blonde. Onassis had Nazi connections that continued his whole life, as did the Perons. For instance, one of Onassis's Nazi associates was Hjalmar Schacht, president of Hitler's Reichsbank, who Onassis hired after the war. Schacht hyped Onassis shipyards in Germany build tankers after W. 2. Until people realize that the real guiding hand behind the Nazis was Satanism, they will continue to be misguided as to the way everything connects together at the top. For instance, John Foster Dulles was the man at Versailles Treaty who can be credited for having created the treaty's harsh terms against Germany that ruined Germany financially after W. 2. And yet this same man, John Foster Dulles, was the person who secretly went to Hitler to confirm to Hitler that the elite would financially back Hitler's rise to power. If Hitler were anything like our image of him, Haider would have wrung his neck. Here before him was the man who made Germany suffer. Why was Hitler friendly with this man? It makes no sense, unless people wake up to what is going on. The answer is that there is a conspiracy of those who are at the top to rule us, and to guide us toward a new world order, and they are quite willing to sacrifice whole nations to do that. Onassis was an extremely close friend of Winston Churchill. The Freemason Winston Churchill is a descendant of a family that has been part of the elite that have secretly run the world. Winston Churchill on several occasions told Onassis that the only one he could trust in WW II was Joseph Stalin. This is a far cry from the picture given in history books. Winston Churchill spent a great deal of time on Onassis's yacht Christina. Onassis was also friendly with Winston Churchill's friend of Bernard Baruch. It was Bernard Baruch who convinced Winston Churchill to join the Illuminati conspiracy. He asked Churchill to come watch something important in NY in 1929, and then he showed Churchill how they could destroy the stock market. That show of power brought Churchill on board. Two other Illuminati friends of Ari Onassis were Joseph Kennedy and Peter Grace. Both men also belonged to top 13 Illuminati bloodlines. Gianni Agnelli, a powerful man in the Illuminati, spent time on a number of occasions on Onassis's yacht Christina while it was in the Riviera. Years before JFK became president, Onassis had JFK and Winston Churchill on his yacht at the same time. In 1928, the Illuminati men who controlled the major oil companies got together at Aknakari Castle and formally created the Aknakari Agreement, which divided up the world into an international cartel. This is why you may have watched the same gas truck bring gas to all the different gas stations in an area, for instance, say a Sinclair station, a BP station, Rothschilds, and an Exxon station, Rockefeller. If the reader understands the world's oil was totally in an Illuminati monopoly by 1928, it will help you understand that Aristotle, who was the man who built the largest oil tanker ships, was also Illuminati. In 1 year alone during the 1950s, Onassis bought 17 new tankers. Evidence of the conspiracy. One of the most telling paper trail signs that the conspiracy has left behind was an executive order that FDR signed just after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. This executive order was a semi-secret amendment to Trading with the Enemy Act, which made it legal to trade with the enemy if the Sec. of the Treasury, then Hans Morgenthau, gave permission. Morgenthau was a tool of the conspiracy, and of course he gave permission to the top Illuminati to trade with the enemy. In 1983, a book came out, Trading with the Enemy, which exposes how the elite secretly kept Hitler going by supplying him, rebuilding his communications, etc. Onassis, as an Illuminati king, worked with other elites, Rockefeller, Kennedy, Getty, to quietly make a profit and keep the war going longer. Onassis sold oil and guns to both sides. ITT telephones were used in German submarines. This executive order shows that at the top there is a conspiracy. It is reproduced on the following pages. There were 450 merchant ships owned by Greeks before WW II. Out of those, Aristotle said 410 were sunk during the war. The official count was 360. Either way, it is clear that most of the Greek shippers lost their large merchant ships. However, the German submarines and aircraft never once touched Aristotle's ships, although they sailed through war zones. Neither did the Eliels. Aristotle alone did not suffer any losses. Aristotle's large fleet did not lose a single ship, even the ones that were in Scandinavia when the Germans invaded. Only the full collaboration at the highest levels could have pulled that one off. Howard Hughes was a self-made millionaire and genius. Howard Hughes was not part of the system, so he was fair game to destroy. Even millionaires like Hughes and the Hunt brothers have to toe the line, or they can be taken out by the Illuminati. This doesn't mean Howard Hughes was virtuous. Howard Hughes gave Nixon's brother Donald a $250,000 loan gift in 1956 in order to continue having vice pres. Nixon in his pocket. Hughes had been a supporter of Nixon for many years. Onassis infiltrated his own men into Hughes' organization. Chester Davis was from Sicily, and although he worked for Hughes, took orders from Onassis. In 1955, Hughes had obtained two doubles, one named L. Wayne Rector and the other Brooks Randy. In March 1957, Onassis men at the Beverly Hills Hotel captured Howard Hughes using Hughes' own disloyal men. Hughes was seriously hurt in the kidnapping. I believe at this point he was taken to Emerald Isle Hotel in the Bahamas. Some of the people who were aware that Onassis captured Hughes dispute that Hughes was taken out of the country. The top floor was rented for the Hughes party. For a month, the captive Hughes was shot full of heroin and then secretly transported to a cell on Onassis' private island of Scorpios. Hughes' two doubles stayed on under the pay of Onassis. One became Hughes, and the other became Hughes' double. Computer programs which can duplicate signatures were used to provide Hughes' signature. The computer and its program used for duplicating Hughes' signature even became public knowledge when the Los Angeles Times had an article on January 28, 1971 about a computer which had been programmed to write the signature of Hughes. The Mormon Mafia that supposedly guarded Hughes actually ran the Hughes Empire for Illuminatis Onassis, which accounts for the change in policies that were made by Hughes Empire. It also explains why they bought up every newsreel they could find on Hughes in order to duplicate voice prints using computers. When they were through with the double L. Wayne Rector, he was shot at Rothschild's Inn on the Park, in London. In a meeting with philo-Satanist Joseph Kennedy in September 1957, the decision was taken to use the Mafia's power to get John F. Kennedy elected. The Mafia was caught in Chicago tampering big time with the voting, but Nixon was denied a recount of the votes. Nixon backed off from making a fuss because he was promised the chance to be president later. Illinois Republicans made an unofficial recount of 699 paper ballot precincts in Cook County and came up with a vote in favor of Nixon. Those votes would have changed Illinois' electoral votes and thrown the victory to Nixon. However, Sam Giancana and his henchman Mayor Richard Daley were not about to let an official recount take place. In 1961, Joseph Kennedy had a stroke, and John Kennedy and Robert, feeling their freedom, and disliking some of the powerful Illuminati like Aristotle Onassis, decided to use their popularity to destroy the conspiracy. I believe Kennedy and Robert had more courage to take on the conspiracy, due to the fact that they were familiar with it from having been, in a sense, on the inside of it during their days growing up. However, neither son had received the Illuminati training and indoctrination that their older brother had, and when B died, Joseph made a mistake when he decided to replace Joe Jr. with John, who they called Jack. The mistake was that John F. Kennedy may have seemed like he'd be a good Illuminati president, but he actually thought for himself. He thought for himself because he was young, and with that impetuousness and vigor of youth, and with the popularity he had the possibility to do some good for this nation. If I were state my evaluation, it would be to tell conservatives that they have been hoodwinked. John F. Kennedy did more conservative, preserving this nation, things in his presidency than Nixon and Reagan, who are heralded as conservative. Kennedy didn't recognize Red China, no, that was Nixon. Kennedy didn't triple the national debt, no, that was Reagan. The CIA has been out to get JFK, ever since they realized JFK didn't view himself as their puppet, but that he viewed himself as their boss. The head of the CIA on purpose ruined the CIA's chances to succeed at the Bay of Pigs. He personally prevented the CIA air cover from taking off, which the CIA knew that without air support, the operation had no chance, which was soon proved correct. In everyone's zeal to get JFK, they blamed JFK. It all sounded so believable, because the CIA were going to tell the full story. The public is not astute enough to realize that the press had subtly turned against Kennedy. Two powerful friends who liked John F. Kennedy and wanted to help JFK fight the elite were taken out before Kennedy was assassinated. Senator Estes Kefauver, whose crime commission had discovered the 1932 deal that Onassis, Kennedy, Mayer, Roosevelt, Lansky and other Illuminati mafia figures had made. Kefauver was a poison so that he had a secret poison-induced heart attack on August 8, 1963. One suspect that might have done it was his subordinate Bernard Fencerwald, who was also a CIA assassin. The other was Philip Graham. His wife Catherine Mayer Graham has been a full participant of the conspiracy and shows up repeatedly in elite activities. Catherine bribed some psychiatrists to certify her husband, who was editor of the Washington Post, was insane. He was ordered by a judge into a mental hospital. When he was allowed to visit home on a weekend, he was found suicided by a shotgun. Bobby Kennedy had a good idea who shot his brother. He wrote an unpublished book called The Enemy Within, and then later he was assassinated too. Actually, the whole establishment were out to get Kennedy, and even George Bush was involved with the assassination. The key to understanding the Illuminati is that it is headquartered in the London area. The Satanists and witches refer to Great Britain as the mother country. Onassis had the best connections anyone could want in the British government, as would be expected of someone of his standing in the Illuminati. He had many British friends. Just one example is Sir Lionel Heald, the BR Attorney General. He attended the exclusive BR Other Club when WW II broke out on Sept. 3:39, Onassis was living in Savoy Hotel, where the headquarters for the Illuminati's Pilgrim Society are. The British London Times backed Onassis in his dispute with Peru over whaling. Onassis did finally get himself into trouble with illegal whaling when the nation of Norway gathered the evidence of his lulling of hundreds of whales that were illegal to hunt. Just two more quick examples of his social connections in Britain are his attendance at J. Paul Getty's party at Sutton Place, Eng. in the 50s, and Onassis' own big party for the elite on the 17th of June, 58 at Dorchester, England. As explained in Be Wiser Serpents, Britain's Overseas Intelligence MI6 is the Illuminati's chief intelligence agency. There is no way of knowing how many meetings took place dealing with the planning of the assassination of Kennedy. The first were high-level Illuminati meetings. But the Illuminati meetings were not operational-level meetings. There were several levels of meetings. Next, a series of meetings by British intelligence at Trial Compound at Montego Bay, Jamaica, and Mafia meetings at who knows where. A minor trading company called Pomindex was the cover to an assassination bureau that had its major U.S. subsidiary, the International Trade Mart in New Orleans. The FBI's Division 5 was tied in with Pomindex, and Pomindex's board of directors had U.N. posts, mafia positions, European banking ties, Nazi ties, etc. In other words, Pomindex was well connected. By the time the planning was done, it included certain elements of the CIA and Freemasons. A Major Louse Mortimer Bloomfield, Pomindex's prey and chairman, a key player in Hoover's Division 5, and a member of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Protestant branch of the Knights of Malta, was a homosexual lover of FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. All the board of Pomindex and many of its various subsidiaries were in various areas in November 1963 carrying out the assassination and cover-up. One of the covers for the Pomindex operators teams was to pose as missionaries of the American Council of Christian Churches, ACCC. The whole reason the elite set up the extensive ACCC was to have a cover for their killing units. For instance, a group of about 30 of the best marksmen were undercover as part of ACCC Missionary School in Puebla, Mexico. The Tolstoy Foundation, who I have visited with, were another pseudo-Christian front. Later, the headquarters of this assassination group was shifted to Paradise Island, Grand Bahamas to Intertel. Ian Fleming's novels write about a third force used to create a world government that was based in the resort islands of the Caribbean. How true that has become. In the westerns put out by Hollywood, when the bad guy does something to the good guy, he runs off with his woman. That is what happened with JFK. Onassis was one of the Illuminati kings who decided JFK must go, and he got to run off with the dead man's wife. Onassis had already gotten Jackie onto his yacht, sexually, prior to Kennedy's assassination. Franklin Roosevelt, Jr. was on board together with Aristotle and Jackie. Jackie didn't enjoy her marriage to Onassis. At one point in their marriage, when they were swimming nude at Onassis Island, Scorpios, 10 photographers with underwater cameras and telephoto lens captured Jackie naked, and her picture was splashed across Playman and Hustler, etc. Jackie was furious and wanted her husband to sue the newspapers and magazines, which he refused to do. A year before Aristotle died, he actually admitted that he had planned the whole operation. The date given for the actual Howard Hughes death, who had been kept prisoner under horrendous conditions by Onassis, was April 18, 1971. In the previous year, 1970, Hughes' purported autobiography had come out, written by Clifford Irving. Clifford Irving's wife took the publisher's check made out to Howard Hughes to one of Onassis's Swiss banks, and was paid. Family difficulties. Onassis' second wife was Tina Athena Mary Onassis. When she divorced her husband for committing adultery, said, "It is almost 13 years since Mr. Onassis and I were married in New York City. Since then he has become one of the world's richest men, but his wealth has not brought me happiness with him, nor, as the world knows, has it brought to him happiness with me." Tina divorced Ari and then went on to soon marry a relative of Winston Churchill, the Marquis of Blandford. Later, she divorced him and married her old brother-in-law Stavros Niarchos in May 1971. But after he killed her sister, she quit him too. Eugenia killed Eugenic, the sister-in-law of Ari Onassis, died according to the official version of an overdose of sleeping pills. Her body in the post-mortem was covered with bruises, black left eye, swelling on the left temple, a hemorrhage to the left of the larynx, and so forth down the rest of her body. Let's not swallow the Illuminati's propaganda to lull us into sleep about what they have done. Aristotle Onassis died in 1975 and his heir preceded him in death in 1973. The world's oil was totally an Illuminati monopoly by 1928, and Onassis was Illuminati to the core. During the 1950s he bought 17 new tankers and made his fortune. The book Trading with the Enemy, published in 1983, exposed how the elite secretly kept Hitler going by supplying him. Onassis, Rockefeller, Kennedy and Getty made huge profits as a result. This permission was legally given by Henry Morgenthau, Secretary of the Treasury.